Madinatu Bello, and I'm presenting on the topic Reshaping Cities, Urban Cultures and Spaces of Belonging, Narratives from Ghanaian Traditional Female Master Drummers. This sketch was undertaken by Madinatu Bello from the University of Cape Coast Department of Theatre and Film Studies. The presentation will go by this content: introduction and context, framing the discussion in literature, and the literature will look at women, musical tradition and gender studies, reshaping cities, urban cultures and spaces, women drummers in perspective. And I'll go to the research methods, which is qualitative phenomenology and situated within Ghana, precisely Cape Coast, Accra, Shaman and Kumasi. And for the findings, I'll be discussing some things on revitalizing cultural spaces and practices in cities and towns, cultural education for degenderalizing spaces and practices, promoting arts education, cultural hybridity, cultural preservation, and advocacy, and end with a conclusion. Introduction and context. Drumming as musical tradition in Ghana has been mostly male-dominated, and this is because certain cultural narratives have been established and used as social controls on activities and practices of women within traditional drumming circles. These narratives span recorded histories and myth, religion, customs and traditions. The results are the creation of gendered musical spaces and lexicons like master drummer, the sons of the drums, which fortify gender prohibitions against women. Interestingly, developments in cities and urban transformation and cultures have caused women to break the status quo by transcending boundaries, acting as cultural ambassadors both on local stages and international arenas, embodying the essence of their nation's heritage and passing down their invaluable knowledge to younger generations. Unfortunately, less attention has been given to them and the phenomenon in research and practice. Framing the discussion in literature. Scholarships in musical traditions in Ghana are gradually reflecting a shift towards gender studies on women and musical practices. One possible explanation for the above phenomenon is the increasing call for decoloniality, which accentuates the decolonizing of knowledge, power, culture, spaces to reduce male monopoly, clear existing social controls in order to bridge the gender equity gap, particularly in traditional drumming. Another may be a challenge to ancient and contemporary systemic powers that shape decisions in musical spaces, content and pedagogies for teaching of musical traditions, and by extension, decolonizing gender studies in the arts. For example, literature from Ampene, Akumensa et al. And Inda et al. Provide a framework for understanding the forms and creative processes of female musical traditions in Ghana, female achievements in indigenous musical traditions, and the social prohibitions that serve as social controls to female participation in gendered musical traditions like traditional drumming. These may stem from the roles that some literatures outline on what women are doing within musical circles these days. For example, female drummers continue to enhance urban life vibrancy, pushing the boundaries of social norms and inspiring change. They create thriving drumming circles that serve as hubs for unity, fostering a sense of community, emphasizing empowerment, art education, conserving and transmitting cultural knowledge to future generations, apart from providing young women with tools for leadership roles. Their presence redefines ideas of identity and belonging in urban environments by enhancing urban activities, questioning conventional wisdom, and encouraging inclusivity. Despite several decades of feminist scholarships, dominant perspectives within discourse on the right to the city, urban spaces in Ghana continue to be divided, restricted, and securitized until the past 3 decades, when the 1992 Constitution of Ghana gave women the right to public spaces, activities, and participation. Based on this and other reasons, women began to break boundaries to enter the drumming circles in cities and urban spaces, reshaping long-standing non-progressive traditions and customs, redefining the frontiers of traditional drumming practices, and calling for reduced inequality. Unfortunately, scholars and researchers within the musical circles appear to pay less attention to how this phenomenon shapes and continues to redefine practices on the musical traditions in Ghana. Judging from the limited numbers of such successful women and the less attention given to scholarship on women and traditional drumming, it is not far-fetched from saying that gendered musical tradition will not be entirely devoid of controls, but could change with time through research. It is important, therefore, to explore the changes that are taking place in this gendered musical traditions in Ghana by exploring the nexus between women drummers, urban spaces, and cultures in Ghana. The study will look at how female drummers are performing cultural change culturally. And by this, I'm looking at three objectives. First, exploring spaces in Ghana where female master drummers are penetrating and restructuring. Second, examining what these drummers are helping to reshape in urban cultures. And third, identify avenues used by these drummers in creating a sense of belonging. Research methods. The study is purely qualitative and data has been collected since 2022 to date. Participants are mainly women, though we have some male managers who form part of it. The participants. I used snowball technique, interviews, participants observation, desktop research, and the interview data and field notes were analyzed thematically. Content analysis was used for audiovisual documents. Participants for the study were found in major cities and towns in Ghana: Accra, Kumasi, Cape Coast, and Shaman. These cities are cosmopolitan and multi-ethnic, serving as hubs for arts and cultural activities. Displaying higher female-to-male population ratio, multiple cultures which may have created liberal males, the cities make it possible for females to venture into male-dominated activities and cultural spaces. It is worth noting that about 90% of the participants had given birth, had some level of formal education, and had support from their male managers and partners. The first research finding centers on how female master drummers are revitalizing cities and towns. Found in cities and towns in Ghana, these female master drummers are exploring and reinvigorating conventional and innovative spaces, either physical or virtual, local and international. They are mostly operating in secular spaces and a few selected religious spaces. They rarely enter sacred spaces where traditional rituals and rites took place. Their presence is felt at festivals, not in the sacred spaces. Marriage ceremonies, museums, cultural centers, secondary schools and universities, churches, conference spaces, theater houses, pubs and community gardens. They act as symbols of cultural practices that are important to shaping the identity of any community within the discourse on inclusivity. Their performances contribute to the total cultural richness of cities, towns, and urban cultures, assisting in the preservation and celebration of these cultural heritages, while making them accessible to both locals and visitors. Their performances serve as tourist attractions, boosting the local economy by bringing in people who spend money on lodging, food, and other goods and services. They challenge gender norms and prejudices by participating in this historically male-dominated space, and their actions tend to empower other women and girls, thus breaking down barriers and promoting gender parity from a positive ripple effect on urban cultures and spaces. And the narratives on this slide will actually highlight whatever I was discussing, where sometimes they move into the schools, they perform at community centers, beaches. They even attended one of the just ended conferences on PASME, that's the Pan-African Musical Arts Education Conference that was organized in Cape Coast. Another finding centers on how these females are reshaping urban spaces, cultures, misconception about women and drumming. From the findings, these women play an important role in furthering cultural education to degenderize urban places and practices by reconstructing gender roles in drumming spaces and pushing for a community of acceptance of female drummers. They organize and lead inclusive drumming groups that embrace participants of all genders, ages, and origins. They provide safe and supportive environment for people to learn, express themselves, and participate in cultural activities. These help learners to shape stereotypical cultural narratives on women by questioning established gender conventions, creating inclusivity, and supporting cultural variety. They use their actions to demonstrate that women can master and flourish in any artistic practices or career. Some have designed and implemented educational programs in schools and communities to teach not only drumming skills but also the cultural and historical relevance of the arts. They have succeeded in creating a sense of belonging where women and men, chiefs and queen mothers, rich and poor, educated and non-educated, accepted and encourage their activities and practices. Some avow that they are giving priority over their male counterparts during important functions and occasions, and in some jurisdictions they are giving awards during events. And a typical example is where one of the female drummers was awarded the best female drummer by the Arts Critics and Reviewers Association in Ghana. Another important finding is how these female drummers are pushing art education in schools and communities. From the findings, these female drummers are advancing art education in the formal and informal context of education. They teach drumming at the basic schools, secondary schools, and tertiary institutions in Ghana and abroad, and engage in discussions at academic conferences. They also collaborate with other stakeholders in the communities and industry to offer educational programs and workshops. And it is even highlighted in this narrative where most of the female drummers are beginning to start drumming classes within some girls' schools in Ghana, and others too are emphasizing pregnant girls who have dropped out of drum lessons. They want to bring them back into the drum circle so that they will continue their learning practices. It is worth highlighting that these female drummers are advancing cultural hybridity and preservation. Their experiences and practices connote their ability to drive cultural hybridity and preservation. They create cross-cultural exchanges and collaborations, adapting urban drum practices into existing practices to create new forms of artistic expressions and identity. Their efforts foster greater understanding and appreciation of their practices, thus creating economic opportunities for them. They are seen to be the torchbearers of cultural resilience and revival, breathing life into age-old traditions while bridging the past with the present. Their drumming rhythms echo through the cities, beckoning people to listen, learn, and celebrate the diversity that urban landscapes encompass. They try in many ways to maintain nurture and reinvigorate cultural practices that are deeply ingrained in cultural rites, ceremonies, storytellings, and community festivals for current and future generations. It also came out that these drummers use their platform to address pressing social and cultural issues within urban environments, such as inequality and injustice. Apart from challenging societal norms, raising awareness about what they can do on the drum and the need to rewrite and change existing negative cultural narratives, which act as social controls on women participation in drumming. To conclude, traditional female drummers in Ghana are important drivers of cultural preservation, education, empowerment, and community building within urban contexts. Their contributions highlight the role of cultural diversity and inclusivity in reshaping cities, urban cultures, and spaces of belonging. Their presence not only enriches urban life but also challenges and redefines societal norms, serving as medium for degenderalizing spaces and practices, art education and cultural preservation, cultural hybridity promotion, and advocacy. Thank you.